My name is Jonny Cohen. I appreciated that very nice introduction. Okay. So kindergartners should work at NASA. Okay. Don't take this too literally. Not all NASA employees should be kindergartners, especially astronauts. And not all kindergartners should be NASA rocket scientists. But hear me out. Kindergartners have the amazing gift of unbounded thought. Experts know their field of expertise very well, including the limitations of what can and can't be done. Becoming an expert in something means you memorize its parameters and boundaries, making it difficult to think outside the box. Most people would argue that in order to think outside the box, you have to know it. I disagree. The box is a collection of Newtonian laws and sentiments of old men who said something can't be done. Now back to the part about kindergartners. Kindergartners are not really experts at anything aside from nose picking. Their unexpertise in rocket science is what enables their creativity. Being uninformed is not just being uninformed of what is possible, but being uninformed of what isn't possible. They don't know limits and therefore do not concern themselves with feasibility. Good ideas are hampered by such limits. Let's play a game. Take a minute to think about how you get to school. All right, go. So you probably came up with a car that has 4 wheels, a nice interior, and is fast. In its simplest terms, the point of a car is to get from point A to B. If we ask this question to a kindergartner, their answer might sound something like teleportation. Duh. Kindergartners have a very clear picture of perfection. So it might be helpful to have a couple kindergartners in the conference room when they're trying to figure out how to get to Mars. Engineers should at least start with the idea of teleportation and slowly work their way down, because they might end up with something more brilliant than a rocket ship. If you remove limits, achieving perfection is not difficult. Since there are indeed limits, experts are pretty good at reasoning within limits. But limits must be challenged in order to uncover the locked doors in the adjacent possible. Meaning, if we remove limits, we can see more of what is possible. Sometimes it takes a new perspective to find a solution and remind us of what our original goal was. Thinkers are socialized into a world of constraints and can be creative within given constraints. We use these constraints to come up with ideas that are possible, but never use constraints to think of the impossible. We cower behind constraints. When I was speaking at the Chicago Green Festival to a bunch of kindergartners, I tried teaching them about some of the principles of aerodynamics, and that was not going well in order to explain GreenShields. So I explained GreenShields in a very, very simple way, that we're essentially turning school buses into rocket ships. And most of the kids agreed and thought it was a pretty good idea and pretty logical to replace their old rusting school buses with new rocket ships, because they're faster and they're much cooler than a traditional school bus. So disregarding feasibility, turning school buses into rocket ships is a pretty good idea. But yes, kindergartners come up with awesome ideas, and experts are the ones who tell them that they're not possible. I think that there is an equilibrium where kindergartners and rocket scientists could work together. So the point is to not lose imagination and creativity, because kids don't concern themselves with limits, and I think that this is the key to creativity. Take me, for example. When I saw tediousness in putting cheese on hamburgers, I made a device that shot the cheese onto the hamburger for you. When my little sister Daniela thought Barbie, who just was speaking earlier, thought Barbie couldn't be an astronaut, I attached her to a rocket I built and sent her off. So I was very excited when I came up with my best invention yet, called GreenShields. And when I was walking home from school one day, I was thinking about this Saturday enrichment class that I took at Northwestern University, where we built Pinewood Derby-like cars, and I was extremely fascinated by aerodynamics and thought about it a lot. So I came across the school bus, which is very not aerodynamic, and I never rode the bus and always watched it from the outside. And I knew that essentially the school bus just wants to be a raindrop in terms of aerodynamics. And so I wanted to fix it. So I came up with the idea of putting a shield on a school bus, and so that it could reduce the amount of carbon that it produces and reduce the amount of fuel that it uses, so that schools could save money and spend less money on burning it. And in my 12-year-old mind, this was an absolutely perfect idea. Let's see. There we go. So I ran home to tell my older sister, Aza, who was a freshman at Highland Park, and she took me to her physics teacher, Mr. Pujara, and he drew some equations on the board, trying to see if it might be worth it, and thought it's a good idea and that I should pursue it. So I did just that. And GreenShields has come very, very far since that day in 7th grade. And we won a $25,000 grant from the Pepsi Refresh project, and I reached out to various local universities. So if you remember that cheese shooter that I said, that I made earlier, and so Stacy Benjamin also did, which I made that cheese shooter in her class. And so as the director of the Northwestern University Siegel Design Institute, we were able to partner with them and start developing the GreenShield. And they gave me the help of 2 students and some professors, which I'm very grateful for. So these are some fun facts about school buses. They only get 4 to 6 miles per gallon. And after lots and lots of hard work, we were able to develop a GreenShield that is able to save 10% of their gas mileage, which we are very happy about. And basically multiply that across 400,000 school buses. That's quite a lot of savings, about 300 million or so. And the US, because the US is spending about $3 billion on gas, and that's essentially emitting the carbon dioxide equivalent to 2 million elephants. So there's quite a lot of change that needs to happen for school buses. And so when some adults, other than Mr. Pujara, learned about my GreenShields, they told me it was crazy, and it probably was. But crazy doesn't mean that it's not going to work. And everything that's considered now that is normal probably was considered crazy at some point. And through GreenShields, I've learned a lot about creativity and that it should not be confined or constricted by the status quo. I try to teach myself to think without boundaries and not knowing the limits, because that limits you by default. So I guess I'd like to leave you with a couple points. So that I learned a lot of things, like computational fluid dynamics, but okay. There we go. So I think that everyone should really stay creative. So I guess these are my several tips of how to stay creative. So, play. It might be a little weird if you're really old playing on a playground, but do it in whatever way that you can. All of my innovations have never actually happened at a desk. It's basically on my floor. And watching your pet, I guess just try and observe the way that nature does things, because nature is a very interesting thing in that it seems to have come very close to the optimal efficiency. And think about what you use. And because you know that everything can be made more efficient, and there is almost nothing that's perfect. So everything can be improved. And just approach the world with that thought. Why is something like this? It's probably because everyone else has neglected it. So try and think of a way to change it. So let's all keep innovative, inventing, building, and imagining the way the world could be. And hey, NASA, bring your kindergartners to work, because minds should wander, and we should all think like children. Thank you.